Good afternoon. It is Monday afternoon now, April 27th, 2020. I'm Keith Tebow. Thank you for joining us on this Monday afternoon as we continue our coverage live on Facebook and also on Channel 95 as we try to bring you up to date on how the city is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot is those on the front lines, those serving us. We talk a lot about those in our hospitals, our nurses, our doctors. But we're also talking about our public safety personnel, our police, our fire, our EMT. And I am pleased to be joined right now by the chiefs of the city of Fall River, Chief Charles Cullen of the police department and Chief John Lynch of the Fall River Fire Department. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this morning. How are you? This afternoon, actually. How are you doing?
Very good. Good afternoon.
Doing good, Keith. Thank you.
Chief Cullen, I actually want to start with you. You know, back when all this started, early to mid-March, even though you had been on the police department for a number of years, you're well known for the work you do throughout the community. You were just appointed as the acting police chief at around that time, and now COVID-19 hits. What's that been like for you, pretty much being thrown right into the fire?
Basically experience throughout my years with the police department, 40 years service actually. And you have to be prepared for anything every day that you can come to work. I was acting chief for 1 week, and Mayor Coogan on March 16th appointed me the interim police chief. That's my current position. Police department, it's teamwork, and we have great people that work here. The men and women on the front lines are doing a fantastic job, and it's teamwork that makes success. So I'm fortunate to be able to be part of the leadership of the police department, and we will get through this. We have 90,000 people in the city, and looking at the confirmed cases, we're way down compared to some cities with a population our size.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Chief Lynch, let me ask you this question first, and then Chief Cullen, you can just chime in after Chief Lynch. In speaking with the mayor, and I speak with the mayor every Thursday morning to get an update, he's been saying that the number of calls to the departments have been pretty much where they've been, if not in some cases below. Let me start with you, Chief Lynch, for the fire department. How have the number of calls been? I would think that maybe your EMT calls may have been a little higher than maybe your general fire calls.
That is very true. Fire calls don't change too much. They're pretty consistent. And just because we're in the middle of a crisis here doesn't mean that we don't have fires and other types of emergencies. So those calls are pretty much consistent. The medical calls, those have gone up a little bit. And obviously that's because of the crisis that's happening. So not only is there the Corona-19 virus going around, but you have other issues and people forget about it. There's still flu around. You know, people still break their legs. So, you know, the medical calls are up slightly because obviously the Corona-19 virus crisis.
Chief Cullen, how about you in terms of the number of calls?
Our calls are actually down, Keith. The day shift and the 4 to 12 shift are running pretty consistent for calls for service. The midnight shift, midnight to 8 in the morning, the calls are quite low actually. And a number of reasons would be less people traveling, the amount of businesses that are closed. So more people are kind of staying home, so that decreases our level of calls, less car accidents, less reports, less paperwork, etc.
Now, Chief Cullen, you know, even though people are being asked to stay at home as much as they can, the mayor and others have said people still need to get out, get some exercise, get some fresh air. Have there been any major incidents in terms of people still congregating in some places? I know yesterday there was a protest at Government Center about those who would like to see the economy back up sooner rather than later. Have there been any issues in terms of congregating that the police department have had to take control over?
No issues in the beginning, maybe the first week, some of the parks, the teenagers getting together for basketball games, things like that. But once they had a talk with them, and the city put yellow tape around the playgrounds, the basketball courts, etc. So we haven't received any complaints. cooperation with businesses has been very good in the city, actually.
Chief Lynch, we know now that when there are cases of COVID-19 in Fall River, public safety personnel like yourself, both of you, actually get a notice as to where the addresses of where these people that have tested positive, where they live. How does that help in terms of you maybe getting an EMT call that may respond to one of these locations? How does that, or does that impact at all the way that your EMTs approach that call?
Well, it impacts all of us, and not just the EMTs, the firefighters also, and also the police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Because now when we have a heads up like that, there are different protocols that we're going to follow that are going to be totally different. Because we have different levels of personal protective equipment, which everybody knows. So once we find out that, number one, this house does have a positive case,
call extension 349.
what we will do is we're going to minimize the amount of people that could be exposed. So we're not going to send in two paramedics. We're not going to send in the 4 firefighters outside. What we're going to do is we're going to send one paramedic there in full PPE. He's going to go up and he's going to assess the situation. And then from there, he can determine exactly what the manpower is going to require. Is he going to require the firefighters and the other paramedic to come up? And if they do have to come up, he's going to tell them, this is the type of personal protective equipment you're going to have to wear. So it's critical. And I have to say that, Chief Cullen, when he puts these numbers in, he gets the addresses from the Board of Health. But the dispatchers we have, they are key. And I have to say they're doing an excellent job. And not just, the positive cases that are on record. Even if somebody calls from a house that's not one of those addresses, the dispatchers have protocols. They ask certain questions to get to the bottom of this, that maybe somebody else in that house, even though it's not on our list, might be a case of COVID-19. So again, it prepares us. It's precautions, and that's key to us. So.
Yeah. So Chief Cullen, as I understand, I believe that dispatchers fall under the guise of the police department. Is that correct? And how do your dispatchers, how have they been trained differently, maybe, to handle these? Has there been any extra training that they've had to undergo?
Right. Our dispatchers are part of the communications unit. We have 38 emergency dispatchers, and I've been directly in charge of them since 2011. And there's a lot of training that goes on. In Fall River, we do police, fire, and EMS services. Basically, we started the last week of February, before mid-March when restrictions set in. I was contacted by the EMS Deputy Director, Fonts, who suggested for us to start preparing and to start requesting our dispatchers ask extra questions on medical calls specifically. And to give you an example, in the past, someone would call saying, I need an ambulance, I'm not feeling good. Okay, we get the information, we dispatch medical rescue to the call. So what we started basically on the last Friday of February, we ask a little more questions. Do you have a fever? Have you been out of the country? What other symptoms do you have? And we relay this to the medical rescue before they arrive at the scene.
And I would assume that this will probably be the practice for the foreseeable future, right? Asking these types of questions. We all talk about getting back to normal, but I think in terms of our emergency personnel, and either one of you can answer this, it'll probably be a while before we're back to normal, or what we used to know as normal. Correct?
It looks that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I would guess it could be a year from now, from the way they're talking. I mean, this thing could linger on for quite a while. So if that's the case, we're going to keep the same protocols in place for us, for everybody's safety.
Has there been discussion with any of your other colleagues on a state level? I know you're both in touch with our local Department of Health and Tess Curran and her crew and any other local health personnel. Are you having discussions with other departments that may be more of hotspots? I know communities like Brockton, a similar community to Fall River, really having a difficult time with a number of cases. And of course, the Boston area. Has there been a sharing of information at all?
Most of my sharing is really with the Bristol County Fire Chiefs Association. And we get together and email one another back and forth, with different situations. And when this thing all started, I mean, we went to first community to get hit by. It was actually, Attleboro, North Attleboro. I mean, they were hit before us. So we're always in contact. And, we share one another information, supplies. Something could be short on masks. I'll say to whatever chief it is, well, I have some extra masks here. I'll ship those up to you. And vice versa. We might need surgical gowns, Tyvek suits. So this is how we get together and we find out what everybody's needs are.
Yeah. Let me just ask both of you as we wrap up here about the PPE, and let me start with you, Chief Cullen. In terms of the supply within the police department, is that still up to snuff where you need to be, and no shortages as of this time?
We don't have a shortage. We've been lucky. We never ran out of anything, and every week we have something coming in. The only item that we like to have more would be the sanitation swipes, they call them. But, there's a plan B. Plan B, you can spray Lysol down and clean the surface that way. But if we ran a little low, again, we have partners. We have the fire department, EMS. We all help each other out. But right now, we have an adequate supply, and we have items on order. So every week there's something coming in.
And Chief Lynch, same thing?
We're pretty good. We have a 30-day supply. We maintain that right along. So we're constantly replenishing whatever we have. We use our normal vendors, order from them. A lot of local companies have really stepped up for everybody. They switched over to a lot of their operations to making masks, making hand sanitizer, making surgical gowns. In addition to that, we have regular supplies coming in from MEMA, and Chief Rich Aguiar, he's our local EMA director. He's been instrumental in that. And we just got another military truck today that delivered PPE for the homeless shelter, which is going to be manned by volunteers. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be protected, not just public safety, but also common citizens that are helping out and volunteering, and also the people in the hospitals and the doctor's offices. And that's immense.
Yeah. Final question for me to both of you has to do with your rank and file, your firefighters, your police officers out and about. They face dangers every day, regardless of the situation. Has there been a little more anxiety, maybe, of some of the rank and file within your ranks? And I'll start with you, Chief Lynch, in terms of the fire department and EMS. How have they been handling it? And I'm sure they've been as professional as always.
They have. They've handled it very well. There was a lot of anxiety in the beginning because of the unknowns. The media really ramped this thing up, and it was critical. And so, obviously, my rank and file were a little anxious because they also have families they have to go home to. But that has since slowed down, and I think we've adjusted to all that. The men and women of the Fall River Fire Department are doing a great job out there, and especially the paramedics and EMS division. I mean, obviously they're in harm's way every single day, but we've always dealt with crisis like these. This is what we do. Public safety, the police department, the fire department, the paramedics, we deal with crisis every single day. Not at the magnitude of this, but it's prepared us for something this large. And like anything else, we adapt and we overcome. So I would say we're in a good place right now, and I'm proud of the Fall River Fire Department and the EMS division, the EMA, and I mean, people have just stepped up and they've done a great job.
Chief Cullen, how about your ranks?
I think the same answer. Basically, in the beginning, there seemed to be a little more people worried because of the unknown. And I think there was a lot of speculation that people may think they had something, but ended up did not have anything. So the littlest illness, if you had say a cough or a sore throat, immediately people may think that I have it now. So they make doctor visits, and some people be home for a couple of days and nothing else happened. They were okay and they came back to work. So, but I would say the first few weeks, especially in my job here, going to house calls, if you have to make arrests, if you have to wrestle people to get them handcuffed, this was more of the worries with the officers. But all in all, education is prevention. We got messages out to all the police officers from day one about protecting yourself, 6-foot distance whenever possible, wearing a mask, washing your hands, sanitizing your work areas. I think this helped out a lot. And now I've noticed a change in the environment here.
Yeah. Seems like, again, that new normal that everyone's been adapting to. So Chief Cullen and Chief Lynch, I appreciate your time. Thank you for what you do for Fall River, and thank you for spending some time with me to inform the community about all the great work that you and your departments have been doing. And hopefully we can do this again soon. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Keith. I hope we can do it again soon.
All right.
Have a
I
good
want to
day.
thank the Chief. You too. I want to thank the Chiefs for joining us, and also thank you for watching on Facebook or on Channel 95. You can go to our website, frmedia.org, for more information about COVID-19 and how we're covering it here in FRC Media. And we hope to see you again very soon on another one of these live broadcasts. So for all of us at FRC Media, I'm Keith Tebow. Thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Be safe.
Take care.